you the ag information you need. This is Market Talk, produced by the American Ag Radio Network. Now, here's your host, Jesse Allen.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome into Market Talk for this Friday, March 18th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Jesse Allen. Great to have you here once again. Thanks for making us part of your day. You can find us online very easily, markettalkag.com. That's our website. That's where you can find all of our streaming sources, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, so many ways to listen to the show. You can also find us, find all of our social media links there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Give us a follow, give us a like, and a lot of stuff on the website. News of agriculture is there, market information. You can all find it at markettalkag.com. Well, coming up on the show today, I was the guest host on Agriculture of America AOA on Thursday, and I got to sit down with my good friend Eric Snodgrass from Nutrient Ag Solutions to talk weather. We got some big weather systems setting up here over the weekend into next week across dry areas of the plains and into parts of the Midwest and the Eastern Corn Belt. We talk about that. We talk about South American weather and just the outlook heading into spring planting season. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. Got to take a look back, though, at Friday's market trade, as it was another down day for the most part in the grain markets. Wheat futures and bean oil led us sharply to the downside, although core beans did come off the lows and finish a bit more mixed on the session. Now, really, though, the search for rational thought continues in the grain and oilseed sector when looking at hour-to-hour and day-to-day trade. Big price swings, they're causing observers to kind of search for just fundamental reasons, which is often lacking in these markets right now. Chicago wheat is traded roughly a 50-cent trading range on Friday. That's considered relatively calm in light of recent volatility. The big price swings, though, have chased many traditional traders out of the market, waiting for some common sense to return, as wheat markets really have been at the mercy of the algo traders, with lower open interest leaving them at that mercy. They just push the market around on a day-to-day basis, oftentimes trading no more than changing momentum signals. Markets largely disconnected from the cash market as the war in Ukraine rages on as well. Not a whole lot of news available regarding Russia-Ukraine. No doubt, though, Sunday night trade going to be volatile once again as we trade the headlines and trade everything happening in Russia-Ukraine. Now, also, I mentioned that rain in the hard red winter wheat territory coming up, a good chance of 1 to 2 inches possible Monday to Wednesday. We're going to hear more about that with Eric Snodgrass coming up in just a minute. Didn't see any export sales announced from USDA at 8 a.m. on Friday morning. It was relatively quiet, relatively down day in the grain trade on Friday. Livestock side, cash cattle market hasn't really seen much renewed interest. Might still see a little bit more as we wrap up in the afternoon, but overall, pretty much done for the week, it appears. Live cattle, feeder cattle end up finishing mostly slightly higher, with the hog market moving lower as well. June live cattle contracts, by the way, flirting with the market's 100-day moving average, so that is something to keep an eye on as well. We saw a cash trade in the north, $1 to $4 higher here this week, mostly about $1 higher, while southern live trade was a bit lower, a bit disappointing on that side. Crude oil up a little bit on Friday. Stock market relatively quiet, just kind of some consolidation on the day and plenty of risk-off trade throughout the entire commodity and stock market sector on Friday. A few of the final numbers. May quart was down 12 3/4, 7.41 3/4. December quart up a half penny, 6.45 1/2. May beans half penny lower, 16.68. November down 2 1/2, 14.66 3/4. We saw May soybean meal, that was up $2.90 a ton, 477. May bean oil, that was down 234 points, 72.29. May Chicago wheat, 34 1/4 lower, 10.63 3/4. May Kansas City wheat down 21 3/4 at 10.70 1/2. May spring wheat, that was down 21 1/4, 10.57 3/4. May oats were up 14 3/4 on the day, 6.95. We saw cotton up a little bit as well. Live cattle for April up 102, 140.50. June up 115, 137.07. August lives up 95, 137.60. March feeder cattle up 45, 157. April up 122 at 162.32. And in lean hogs, April down 95, 99.40. May down 90, 107.10. And June down 90 at 116.07 on Friday. Well, again, yesterday I talked with Eric Snodgrass of Nutrient Ag Solutions during my guest host spot on AOA. And we talked a lot about the upcoming weather systems here through the country this weekend into next week and looking ahead to spring planting and more. Here's that interview with Eric Snodgrass of Nutrient. Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient. Eric, great to have you on, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty excited about this big system coming through the plains as well. So it's certainly, really, it's the first one we've had since the beginning of the year. And it's going to be working hard on area and drought. So we're going to have to watch this one carefully.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about it a little bit. Talk about how this is setting up. I believe some of this is coming out of the Rockies, and it's really timely for some very drought-stricken areas of the southern plains and into the central plains as well. Tell us what we're seeing.
Yeah, well, you think about that area in the central and southern plains, and you have some places, there are even pockets in Nebraska that are having their driest start to any year since 1893 when our record keeping kind of began. So to get a system that pulls through there, even putting down just a half inch of rain, I mean, just it helps. So this one's coming out, like you said, from the Rockies, but its origin is actually in the Pacific Northwest, and that's important to think about. If we want to completely wipe out the drought in the mid part of the country, we got to get better flow out of the Southwest. This system's coming in from the Northwest, which means it's doing its best that it can to help eliminate drought concerns in that area, but it's just one system. The overall pattern is not set up just yet to completely cure the drought, but we're going to be talking snow in the high plains. We're going to be talking severe weather in the southern plains, lower Mississippi River Valley into the southeast. We're going to talk flooding in parts of the mid-south on the Ohio River, on the Mississippi River. This next system coming through is going to it's going to hold a big punch. And then behind it, though, I just don't see anything else following it up, right? So I'd want to see 3 or 4 or 5 of these over the next, honestly, I'd like to see 5 of them over the next 5 weeks, and then we wouldn't be talking about drought anymore. I've got 1 dialed up. We need more.
Definitely. Well, we look at the current drought monitor map released here just today and still seeing a lot of reds and browns and dark oranges on that screen, west of the Mississippi, some of those central plains, southern plains areas. We think about spring planting season. We're already starting to see a few planters roll in some southern areas. Not many, but a few. We're going to be seeing more presumably here in the next 4 to 6 weeks rolling. You look at some of those central Corn Belt areas. I look at Iowa specifically. There's some drought there that if they don't get some good precipitation, that could be something to really keep an eye on, Eric.
It is. And you're right. There is still drought in Iowa, through Nebraska, through the Western Corn Belt. But, talking to growers out there, they're like, all right, leave it in place for just a little while longer. Let me get in early. Let me get in fast. Then, as if I could dial it up, they're like, bring on the rain at the end of May through June and July, and that would just put a massive crop in the ground. So those folks right now are sitting there going, all right, it's dry, but if it's still dry June 1st, then they're going to push the panic button. So we still have that window in that area that we're going to, just sit and wait. You talk about where we've already had some planters rolling, like down in Texas. They were up to about 25, 27% planted, but remember last weekend, they had a frost event that got all the way, almost to the southern tip of Texas that went through there. I don't know what kind of damage it did. I haven't got any reports just yet, but just a reminder to everybody that even with some of these mild days that we've been dealing with here, our last frosts for a lot of us in the Midwest are still another month out. So we've still got some time here where we have before we go into the fields really in earnest.
Well, and some of those mild days, I know across parts of the northern plains, northern tier, et cetera, maybe some of that snow melt, maybe a little minor flooding there as well. So definitely not out of the woods yet when it comes to that. But also, Eric, as we've kind of talked about spring planting and shaping up, and you mentioned you're looking for a few more systems. What are some of the longer range models saying? You said you're not seeing much. Is there better chances? I know we've got some La Nina issues throughout parts of the world. What are you seeing, bigger pictures we get towards May, June, July, et cetera?
Sure. So we think about what that La Nina does. It's kind of like it's a background feature. And what it tends to do is rob some of the momentum of the jet stream as it comes into the North Pacific and then eventually in the United States, which means our jet stream just gets kind of bigger and more loopy. In that particular situation, it's one where places that we have drought are probably going to continue with them into the near future. So all of the models, we look at them and then we use statistical analysis and we say, what's going forward? They're all so hung up right now on the fact that there is a La Nina. There's some cold water in the Gulf of Alaska, which is historically correlated with drier conditions in the United States. and there's drought in the central U.S. So they push it forward. They don't break away from it. Where it's wet, like mid-south, the eastern Corn Belt into New England, they just keep that really, really wet. And I'll be honest with you, the worst place in the country right now is going to be over in California, where California, Nevada, Southern Oregon, whole region is having its driest start to any year since 1893. They need all this late season precip to pack up mountain snow. That means those reservoirs are not going to be full again this year. And I'm very, very concerned about that particular region. But, you talk about longer term. What about this upcoming summer? We do have elevated risk of drought expansion this summer. But in order for me to build in some sort of confidence in telling you what I thought that was going to be, I got to get past what we call the spring barrier. I need to know how the jet stream pattern starts to behave toward the end of April. That's the key time to look for. Until then, every model is going to split the country on the Mississippi River. The farther to the west you go, the greater the risk of drought. The farther east you go, right now, it looks as though it's going to be wet.
Eric, I want to get an update on South American weather as well. I know we're getting into that safrinha corn crop in Brazil. We've had drought issues down there. We've heard the reductions to the crops in South America. What are you seeing as far as their weather outlook here as we work into the back half of March?
Yeah, so all the damage has really been done, right? There was the drought that started in November, carried through December, January, and part of February that hammered the southern growing areas, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina as well. So that's what peeled back, well over 20 million metric ton from that soybean crop. Well, most of those soybeans to the north are out. The safrinha crop is in, and that's mostly corn. And of the expected, 3-point-some-odd billion bushels of corn we want to get out of that area, there is some risk going forward of it being a bit drier than normal and the monsoon shutting down a little early in the north. Now, right now, if you ask me how big of a stressor is it, I don't think it's that big. I have to see some more evidence that we're going to keep weakening the monsoonal flow. And how we do that, keep the La Nina surging, keep pushing the MJO over into phase 5 that historically just suppresses the monsoon over Mato Grosso to Goiás, over toward Bahia, and that's where we have a lot of safrinha crop. So they're drier right now in that area. It's if they stay drier there, not just the next 10 days, but the next 30 plus, that we start to see major problems with that safrinha crop. So I'm right now, I'm biased neutral to low on keeping that 112 million metric ton crop of corn that most estimates are currently sitting. I still think there's some risk in the system going forward.
Well, Eric, as well here before we run out of time, got a couple minutes. Any other big weather storylines you're watching here globally or across the U.S. as we work through the rest of the month of March?
Yeah, my biggest concern right now has been over what this La Nina has been doing. It's got a full bag of tricks, and it has tricked me twice. And what I mean by that is that we thought we saw it fading after December, and it did. All of a sudden, by mid-March, it's got a little bit of a resurgence. And now we no longer have such confidence in our long-range models at predicting it fading away completely. The U.S. model wants to keep La Nina around all summer and have it rebuild next fall and winter. The Europeans and other modeling groups don't do that, but it makes me just stop and think about what the possibility of having a third year of La Nina would look like. I think what's going to really be important once we get into spring and summer is to know, did the La Nina fade away to nothing? Or did it actually keep a grip on the pattern? If it does, this has big implications for drought in the Midwest. It has big implications for rain in the West. And it could also have a really big impact on the upcoming hurricane season. So, Jesse, if it sounds like we've got a lot of things we're just staring at and watching, and we're sitting here going, okay, let's wait and see. That's exactly how I feel every morning as I forecast the weather.
And again, that is Eric Snodgrass of Nutrient Ag Solutions. Always great to catch up with him. Great to talk to him. And we look forward to catching up with him again real soon to talk weather. Coming up next week, Monday, we'll have John Heinberg from Total Farm Marketing join us as we take a look at how things fare as we go through the weekend and come back and get into trade here next week. We're inching closer to those USDA acreage numbers at the end of the month. We're inching closer to more spring planting happening, and we continue to have very volatile markets. So definitely stay tuned for all the latest market information, analysis, and more we bring you here on Market Talk. We thank you so much again for making us part of your day, hopefully every single day. We thank you for tuning into the show. Find us online, markettalkag.com. That's going to do it for this Friday, March 18th. I'm your host, Jesse Allen, wishing you a great weekend.